Good evening, members. The order is at 7:32. Members present are Representative Chase, Richie, Gardner, McComb. Scott is hybrid here with Zoom, and we're waiting for Representative Norman will be here momentarily. Oh, yeah. There we go. So all members are present. New business tonight is 321, 2022-68.5 American Rescue Plan Act Project Award. So resolution to approve the American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA grant. I'm going to ask three people to read this into the record, and Representative Chase could read the first page. Representative
Since it's in
Jacoby,
a packet, you don't have to read every one.
you don't want to read
You
everyone?
don't have to.
I read this.
Yeah, you read the second page, and Representative Norman can read the third page for us. Thank you.
So this is
Yeah.
a resolution to approve the American Rescue Act Plan ARPA grant. Whereas the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021, Public Law 117-2, the Act, extended grants to municipalities in order to fund properly authorized specific projects as reconciliation for pandemic-related impacts. And whereas the town of Groton received a grant under the Act for the full allocation of $8,587,894.04. And whereas the town recognizes this grant to be a unique opportunity and that the Act imposes limitations in that the grant funds may be spent only upon projects authorized by the Act and which are identified by the town's legislative body. And whereas the town acknowledges that the Act provides United States Inspector Generals with legal authority to audit, investigate, and oversee projects and activity carried out with the grant in order to determine that the grant funds are properly used. And whereas the town has solicited input from the community by a variety of methods, including a proposal and vetting process in order to identify projects for which the grant may be used and to ensure the grant is spent as authorized. And whereas the Groton Town Council, as the town's legislative body, previously allocated $3,742,240 in grant funding to specific projects, and said grant were accepted by the RTM. And
Whereas after the first allocation, the Groton Town Council and the town legislative body reviewed proposals for projects to use the grant funds. And has, based upon that process, subsequently identified projects totaling $2,466,503. Now therefore be it resolved that the town council of the town of Groton, exercising its authority under the Act, hereby resolved to accept said grant funds for the following projects totaling $2,466,503.
Don't read all the grants, just in the bottom. And be it further resolved that premium pay for town employees shall apply to those working for the town as of March 16, 2020, and continue to work for the town at the time of distribution of funds. And be it further resolved that the premium pay for full-time employees within the police department, including this dispatch, shall be $1,500 per employee, while other full-time employees shall receive $500, and part-time employees shall receive 50% of the full-time authorized payment for their department. And be it further resolved, the Groton Town Council refers the said grant in the amount of $2,466,503 to the representative town meeting for acceptance under Chapter 4 of the Town Charter, Section 4.1.2B. So moved.
second,
Thank you. Okay. We'll have some discussion here. Start by Representative Scott, you're online. You have any questions for any of the staff that's present?
Just a couple quick notes.
Yep.
Of course, this goes back to the American Rescue Plan Act of 21. Which was adopted in March 21. As COVID hit back in 20, we formed a long-term recovery committee to see what all we brought in people to see where the needs were. And as these ARPA dollars were known to be coming along, first we had the expert on ARPA, that came on board to help with us. But we were originally awarded 8.5 million. Yes. We still have, and we've spent some obviously, but we still have some in reserve. For one thing, we have 1.4 million set aside just in case the seawall in the city needs it. They do have some now state funding, but they don't know what it's really gonna cost to do the seawall. If they do end up needing that money, that will come back here, for that project. We probably won't know that for another, 4 or 5 months probably. It'll be a
Okay,
while.
start the project and they find.
They've got an engineer, I think they've got an engineer now on board, but the study hasn't been done, so 2 months to get the report. On what's actually gonna cost,
That's the city.
just the city. Well, I mean, they'll do the project, but we're ultimately, but if we don't use grant dollars or the state dollars didn't cover it, then the town covers. Between the state dollars and some of these ARPA dollars, so I can't imagine it would be more than that, but you never know. There's also about,
Construction costs are always paid.
yeah, definitely. And we also have some set aside for work at the housing authority. Been about 700,000, what was that?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not so sure if they're gonna end up needing that, but it's on in case they do it for their project, but that might be something that comes from a
So those two figures are 1.4.
I figure at some level we'll have a second round of this eventually, because some project might come on, some might come under budget,
Yeah,
some
and
could
some
come
may
over.
go up
So we'll just say, yeah, so there might be a second round. Got anything you wanna?
Just on our process for receiving projects, put out our application and made available for weeks. We'll also notify them, having a public input through the budget simulator. Pull together our needs assessment. And with the results from that budget simulator, giving the public's, their balancing their ARPA budget.
Yep.
And then send it to the long-term recovery committee for them to evaluate scoring based on the applicant's capability to implement the project, the ability to have a transformative recovery, investment, so long-term ability to maintain that beyond just that 4-year minimum to spend the funding. And then based on that scoring, advance to town council.
Very good.
And just to mention to some level or another, we had about 14 long-term recovery meetings, where this got discussed as well as how some town councils and town meetings, so it's been quite a long process since the funds were announced.
Plus, there was the supplemental questioning that occurred as well. Town council had some additional questions. And so those questions were posed to all of the applicants. They had an opportunity to reiterate what they'd already submitted or maybe try to refine to demonstrate that they have the most competitive solutions. So that was a part of the discussion with the county council too.
And I think everybody has this correct. The first column was with the first round, what they asked for, each applicant. The second one is if you see a number in the white column, it just means that is what they came up with their own revisions number. If it's blank, it just means they didn't change it. It doesn't mean it's 0. And then the whatever you call that peaches color is what the town council actually funded.
Okay. Representative.
Just a few questions. So just to confirm, John, we had 1.4 million-ish reserved for the seawall, $795-ish thousand reserved for the Groton Housing Authority, and there's no other contingency set aside right now.
I think there's some, like 20 something, what does it say on that spreadsheet? I think 29,000 contingency, so it's not much contingency. Yeah,
And I know for the finance department, they're gonna have the heavy lifting, correct, for the tracking purposes, every dollar is accounted for.
we've been working closely between Kevin and the finance department. Now we're looking, when these grant dollars were first being announced, they were gonna be a little more restrictive on use. However, they came up with the final rule was under 10 million, you have a little more flexibility for basically any governmental purpose except for pension, fund balance, what else, there's 1 or 2 other things.
Those are the.
You're not supposed to replace existing budget dollars with it.
Can't offset a mill rate increase.
Right.
And is that different from the buckets that were assigned?
Not really.
So I guess my other question was on the agenda specifically, the community center didn't have an item number. Is there an explanation for that?
It came up after the regular application process, it was added in later, so it didn't have a assigned number to it.
Obviously, almost $500,000 allocated by the council for the Groton ambulance, so the stabilization fund. If that's
Only 189.
Was
They only did 189.
2189?
That was what we.
Oh, am I looking at the spreadsheet?
What project number?
Number 16. I think they requested almost happened.
I'll have
Yeah,
that.
and then up in 189.
Okay, so I'm looking at the other spreadsheet.
Right.
Yeah, that's. Okay, so that, thank you. And then the last one was the community center improvements. I know they were thinking about the pickleball.
Yeah.
So, I guess my only concern was I know we're thinking about possibly moving forward with community center, some sort of updates to that. That wouldn't affect it to just any extent, you think, right?
No,
These are like general big improvements.
No, Mark thought this was well worthwhile, that's needed.
Oh, absolutely. I think I've seen,
Very, yeah.
yeah, a lot of people have talked in the community playing pickleball. I think
It's amazing how popular it is.
yes. Thank you. That's it.
And Norman, any questions?
Give me 1 second. I got distracted.
Sorry,
Forwarding.
John didn't send me the spreadsheet. It was like.
I thought he said to, did I send it to you guys?
I have a
You sent
spreadsheet.
some of us.
Neil has.
Oh, I think I hit reply to Betsy's email. I hit reply to Betsy's email, that's what I did. Sorry about that.
It's okay.
Well, we're putting you on hold. Representative Scott, you have any questions?
Yeah, so I think Representative Jacome just asked, and it might have been answered, but I'll use as I'm going through the separate list that we have on the town's website of all the different applications. You get to Groton Ambulance Association, and they're not specifically listed, but it does say stabilization fund, so it matches. But the application says 487,000, and we're giving them 189. So can you fill me in as to why there's a difference there?
As they, well, they revised it themselves to 159 if you, after the initial 47, so they themselves came back. Kevin talked about giving them a chance to revise. They came back with 159. The difference between 189 and 159 is 30,000 for the ARPA pay, like the Euro pay type thing.
Okay.
Making it up in another
Right.
bucket, basically.
And they've been working hard on their budget. You know, they've got some challenges. They're doing well with it. They've made some different changes. As a matter of fact, they submitted for a lower budget this year than we currently have, which is nice.
Right. Well, I'm not critical. I'm just wanting to know, like, you know, why is there a difference there? I mean, did they already get a portion of that money, or but so they've actually reduced their request from 47 to the 189. Do any of these requests create a permanent employee in the town of Groton that will need to be funded when these funds are gone?
No, that's something we've advised all along, is we don't want to see things put in there that you have to worry about later.
Okay.
Outside of Kevin. But
No,
that was earlier, not in this list.
okay.
Kevin's worth every penny.
Yes. And how are we managing that pickleball court once it's built? I can't wait to play.
It'll be under Parks and Rec, so I'm sure they'll find a way.
Yeah, actually, I don't have any questions. I understand there was some contention at a recent town council meeting over this. Can you discuss what happened at that meeting, what they were being spun up about on this, or
Well,
what was their issue?
well, it was generally how to go about it. How do they didn't like the earlier scoring from the long-term recovery committee. So they kind of, you keeping it in mind, but somewhat stepped away from that. And but also keeping in mind the work Kevin did. They spent about an hour discussing passionately which way to go about assigning it. And then it kind of went slow for a couple hours after that until everyone got tired. So eventually, you know, the thing is, most of them, people generally, you know, they're all, you know, we were able to fund most, once we had those revisions, you know, we funded a great majority of the project, so it worked out pretty well. It was really more of a tweaking situation at that point.
Okay. And all of these projects that we've got on here, like, you know, the hockey rink upgrade, the pickleball court creation, greenway signage, I'm looking at all, you know, a variety of things that have the potential for things to go over budget. So, you know, let's, you know, focus on the pickleball court. Where did I see that here? So that's where is it? I just saw it. Where'd it go? pickleball. So $129,000 to build a pickleball court. What happens if it comes in at 135 or 140?
Well, we expect, Greg Hanover, Public Works was heavily involved in this. They're getting a pretty good feel now for where things are coming in. And if they have to, if you recall, earlier on, we had the front athletic field at the community center that came in over budget.
Mhm.
And Public Works took on work themselves to get it in budget, so. Some of these will come in over, some will come under. A lot of these are just set things like for the meals program, that kind of thing. Healthy Groton Campers program, that's a set amount.
Sure.
But and if they're ones that aren't our projects, they could check later, they'd have to come back to us. If they had bids in over, we'd have to probably put them on hold, I would think, to see if they couldn't come up with funding themselves, they'd have to see how we did on the rest of the projects and where funding is. In terms of our projects, also keep in mind, these are all things of ours that we would have asked in a budget eventually. So these are all things we're funding with these, not that we're reducing our mill rate because we haven't got there yet, but avoiding.
But these could eventually have been a CIP project, is what you're saying.
The ones that are town departments, yes.
Also,
I guess my concern is we're allocating this money and then, with everything being so expensive and supply chain issues and things like that are creating increases in costs. Is there enough cushion in these things to make sure there's enough money? Or are we going to be looking at, a year from now? Gosh, we projected, this $8 million or $3.7 million, but we really needed another $1 million to get it all finished. So I just want to make sure that the due diligence has been done here so that we're not getting that request a year from now.
Right. And part of it was going through twice, having them refine their numbers, but also Paige just reminded me, each and every applicant that receives money has to first sign an agreement with the town that says exactly how it's going to be used, that if you misuse it, you have to pay us back, although it's a pretty lengthy document to protect us.
Okay. Yeah, like the studio upgrade for SCC TV, I can see how that's just, write them a check and then they got to document it, but I'm just thinking about some of the stuff that we own, such as the pickleball court is the example. It seems to jump off the page at me, but just want to make sure that we're not going to get a request in the future, but it sounds like we'll be good on that. Someone have an answer?
I was just gonna say one other thing with the money that's set aside for the housing authority. I don't think we're gonna end up needing it. Either way, I'd recommend keeping that back until we know how these are all out. So that gives us about 700,000 there or something, whatever, to as a bit of a contingency if need be.
So who is the oversight of this going forward? So is this out of your office, John, or is this?
No, it's kind of a combined, Kevin knows the rules on ARPA, but finance director will have the, control of the monitoring the money and that type of thing. So really it's a combined effort. When Cindy was here, she and I and Kevin and Paige wrote the initial agreement to, that each entity has to, with the attorney to sign up. So we all did it jointly with the attorney to get that where we want it to be. So we're all set to go.
Will there be regular report outs to us as far as how the money is being spent and things like that?
Certainly, we can ask when we do economic development updates, we can bring either Paige or bring Kevin along.
Actually, if you could make that part of your town manager's report, that'd be handy.
Okay. As spreadsheets of all, we just shoot them to me and I'll.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, this is my last question. So again, we're allocating $3.7 million and maybe we go the other direction. So we end up spending, just $3 million and we leave the $742,000 on the table. What happens to that money? Do we have to send it back to the feds or?
No, we haven't. We have to commit dollars by the end of 24. They don't have to be spent to the end of 26. So as these projects shake out, like I said, I anticipate at least getting something also back from the city. We'll probably have another round of this once we know where everything's coming out. As long as it's all dedicated by the end of 24.
Okay.
If at the end of 26 is not spent, then yes, yeah, but we have to get.
Well, that's 3 years from now, but yeah, so at the end of 26, if we still have $700,000 on the table, we got to send it back.
Correct.
Okay, Paige?
I just want to stress that the agreement is fairly significant This is a reimbursement type program. So the agreement isn't just gonna say project name, there'll be certain benchmarks. Milestones, when you complete this certain milestone will release monies. Second milestone will release monies. So on some of these projects, we might actually find that they're under budget, which allows us, I think, that additional funding to address any projects that may be having some
In terms
challenges.
of the over budget, it came in under budget.
Yeah, and I think that helps us as well with the next round of funding.
Very good. Thank you,
That's all
Representative.
my questions for the moment.
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Yes, go ahead.
So John, what did you mean by that, you want to report, from the town manager's report time? Do you want like progress of where people are with their, projects? Is that what you're talking about, or?
Yeah, I guess I'd like to hear, we're allocating somewhere between, nearly 4 million and $8 million here of public funds. I'd like to see kind of a regular update as to where these projects are at, how much has been allocated, what's remaining, and what percentage of the project is complete, type of a thing.
Okay,
That's-
thank you.
And that's an
I
easy
agree with that.
spreadsheet to do, so.
Thank you, John. I agree with that.
We've been discussing that internally as an impact report on. Not only tracking the progress, but just really showing from. Pictures of the truck in the communities.
I think that helps with the transparency of what we're doing and how we're spending the money, and I think everybody knows what we're doing, it's just how is it going, and I think Paige, when he does his reports, I don't know if we're doing them every quarter or however we do it.
But I can put a monthly.
Yeah,
thing.
I mean, I'm sure that all of us are gonna be involved in how this is spent, and I would like Representative Norman to ask a few questions. I want everybody to ask a question tonight about how they feel, so.
Yeah, I think my first question, I noticed in a couple places, the economic assistance funds, the HUD, housing counseling agency, that it was underfunded by 50% or more than what was requested, or even in the case of the economic assistance fund, they're downgraded, like amount that they needed. Do you have concerns about that? What sort of, how is that gonna play out, or are those sort of catch-alls, and so they'll do what they can with what they have?
Well, first of all, I don't know, do you have the spreadsheet that shows the revised?
Yeah,
You
so I see that I went.
Yeah, so you first,
They revised down to 200, but only got 100.
right, so yeah, so you're ignoring so we ignore the green one. Look, that's.
So I pretend it never existed.
Well, they themselves downgraded it
Okay.
and said that's all they need.
But I hear that in many of these other cases, people downgraded it and then got their full original amount. So I don't think we can actually truly ignore that, because.
Yeah, it happened
Because
a couple
people
times,
were,
yeah.
we're often fully
Yeah.
funded at the original amount, not their revised amount.
I think as the council, they did a couple revisions at the end as they went through all of them. They said, okay, we got a little bit of money left to play with. Let's go back, and like the meals program ended up. Actually, the night of the resolution, got some money put back in it, and so a few times that happened.
Yeah.
Once they got through all the projects.
For those two that are sort of more significantly underfunded than they're requested, though, do you have concerns about that? What was the?
What were the two project numbers? One was our economic assistance fund.
17 and 45.
That's. 17 is- Again, that's our own funds. I mean, it's to start new programs, or you want to explain what the funds are for, but. It's that we want to give money out to the public, to these other
Right,
agencies
which
too.
feels like the primary
Yeah.
reason for the ARPA funds, so
Right.
it's
So it was a-
surprising that it's.
It was a
under-
compromise, yeah, essentially it was a compromise, yeah.
I think, going back, we did a needs assessment that would then engage the community. And I don't know, you probably had heard, we had these buckets. And there's different categories we were trying to address. So economic and business was one of those buckets. But some of these projects are addressed in that fashion, like beer brewing and Mystic Cheese. Those are two significant awards that would fall under that bucket. The Economic Assistance Fund is not as much as we initially asked for, but we have to create that program. It basically involves what we call pivot grants for small businesses. I think there's still maybe 40% of the businesses in town that do not have an online adequate presence. They don't have a business plan. So we would do small grants to businesses, probably about 5,000 each, so that's about 20 businesses. Maybe once we get that going, if there's a second round, we come back and try to backfill with additional funding.
And then 45. The housing.
Oh.
Yeah, what program is that, the HUD program?
Homeless hospital,
Must have more than
homeless hospitality.
Right.
Their program did also receive funding from New London, and their funding is for 2 years. They get that recognition that it's helping people in thriving New London communities access homeownership. They have courses on how to build up your funding to acquire your home, how to maintain it over time, and
It's a coaching class.
Right.
as well as just like a resource center.
Yeah.
And through 2 years of programming.
Yeah.
But
We spend a lot of money right now in the state of Connecticut. We got $600 million set aside for first time home buyers. We have a whole nother project with a $50,000, first time home buyers down payment forgiveness grant. There's a lot of good things that are going
There's
on.
quite a few grants out there
State's
for this
concerned.
type of.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's different.
From what this is, no doubt, but it's still part of the project.
That's different than the housing rehab fund program, which is the town of Groton program, but they both deal with housing.
And then my next question is around, you mentioned the beer brewing and the Mystic Cheese.
Right.
This is us paying for their pollution mitigation, great, don't want them to pollute. Are we now going forward, once we paid for this, gonna hold them to a certain standard of not polluting or like actually like being better to our water system? I've heard that this is a, sort of recurring problem.
Yes, it's gonna help. The town has wanted it improved, public works been involved, utilities been involved.
The sewer authority's been holding off on doing anything to make sure they get these ARPA dollars, because
Okay,
we're not sure if they survive in those locations without these dollars.
It's combined business assistance and infrastructure and environmental type program.
But this gets them to the standards the sewer authority and public works want them to be at.
and then they will be required going forward to maintain that
Yeah.
level of compliance, we're not gonna have to continue.
No, it's one time.
It'll be fine, stress, nobody can keep up with it. The laws change so quickly with everything that they do.
Yeah.
It's an endless battle when it comes to business and pollution.
So is there a sewer problem throughout that whole industrial park,
No, it relates. to
or is it
the
just their business?
Because they're a manufacturer that basically relies on a lot of water, but it also, they have a certain discharge from their products. And right now, they've had to try to haul it off site. And with the system, it's gonna make it much more affordable and much more efficient moving forward.
Anything else, Representative Norman?
I guess my last question, because you said no staff, who's gonna drive the car around?
Hi.
The public works number 19, the car to promote tourism.
That's with that's just, for the Chamber of Commerce's use, probably Bruce Flax. It could be one of those people there, but no, it's not a new person.
That one is jointly funded by Stonington as well.
Got it. 50-50, so we each get half the car, or who gets the better place?
It takes slightly more than us.
Sounds like shotgun.
I think, and they've got a uniform, but it's us, yeah.
I'd like to hear from Mrs. Garden.
Yeah.
25%.
You're like.
Fair enough.
There's large people pouring it, but
So a couple questions. We have to either prove it all or
Right.
reject it all. What happens if we reject it all? What happens with the funds?
Well, they don't get allocated anytime soon. And the problem is, you have to all be on the same page for which particular ones to get direction to,
Come on.
Because what you don't want to do is say this person doesn't want this, you
Well, I
gotta look at
understand.
it as a whole. Yeah.
Right, I
Yeah,
understand
no one's gonna get
that.
everything they want.
So the funds would go back into,
They've come back to the town to try to tweak and try to get it past the RTM again.
okay,
They have to come through our committee again.
right, okay. My other question would be, are you setting up any programs with these funds, and will the programs go away when the funds are extinguished? You mentioned something about you still hadn't established, you were still putting together a program. So I'm wondering if we're gonna, once the ARPA funds go away, to establish a program using the ARPA funds, once the ARPA funds go away, are the taxpayers gonna be liable to continue the programs?
I think there are two questions that go with that. The first one is, will the community still realize a benefit from a program? Second question, will there be a cost associated with that program, a long-term cost, either jobs or a taxpayer's expense? I'll pick on the housing rehab fund. That program is intended to recycle the money over time. We already have a housing rehab program, but it's a CDBG program and we have a waiting list. So our hope is that it does continue, but we already have the staff to manage it. There would not be any additional staffing, there would not be any additional expense. Let's say our ideal world, 10 years from now, we'd still get paid back so we can.
Houses turn over and all that kind of thing, you get money back. And
We don't.
there's a couple outside agencies. Safe Futures has one program, but that, that will be on them. For one, they get funding from multiple places. And it'd be on them if they want to continue that program. It wouldn't have anything to do with us.
Much of the language that the federal government put out, and Kevin did a really good job in releasing the RFP soliciting applications, mentioning we are not looking for longevity with these programs. We are not looking for long-term incurred costs. Should be immediate response to COVID, getting you beyond COVID, and there should not be any long expense to the community as a whole.
A couple more questions. Line item number 76, town employees. There's a 117 next to that. What is that?
117 employees.
Okay, that's the.
Yeah, that's what it's like.
And what's the money for the town employees?
That would be like the hero pay type thing. Police and dispatch is 1,500, of course, it's taxable, so less of that. 1,500 for police and dispatch, as well as that's also what went to like Groton ambulance. Other employees get 500, which not paying a lot once tax, so it's like recognition.
Right, so number 76, town employees, 117 employees are gonna split $58,500.
The next one, the outside, I don't know what the outside first stands.
Yeah, I don't know what that means either. That was my next question.
Oh, outside, yeah, outside fighters, fire and all that, yeah, that's what it was.
Okay, so town employees, human services, is that going to the employees or is that going to
Human
human
services.
services department?
Human services, we'd already allocated her 50,000 for rental help and mortgage help. That's just, they've actually, and it's for people who've been affected by COVID. They've actually been using their money. It took a while to go, now they actually need more money for it. So you'll see, if you go back up, 43 is the steel workers, so the people that public works
Public
employees.
works guys, right?
Right, police premium
Yeah.
pay, you see that?
Yeah.
You'll see Quantum Bridge fires, that's actually not, that's separate there. Telecommunicators are dispatchers, and then basically everything else. Town employees are basically everything that's not those three.
So everybody's getting a hero's paycheck.
500, right? Now, and then part-time people, you'll see that, that's prorated.
So didn't that?
Yeah.
I didn't forget about the state.
And part-time people get 50% of.
Right, I understand. Yeah.
We keep our employees this way. Keep them happy, everybody gets a piece.
Well, it's hard to,
Look,
we don't like to.
turnover people cost more money than anything else. That's my opinion. I see it at the hospital all the time.
Okay,
Can't help everybody, right?
I have another question on the hero pay piece of it.
Gotta wait.
So does this create a taxable event? So like if we're paying an employee $500, so we have to match FICA and all that stuff, and then what about 403B matching if they're on a 401k type of a plan? And then what's the impact on our pension?
There'll be FICA and that type of thing, nothing of the other benefits. There'll be taxes taken out like usual for any pay.
So the town of Groton has to match, what, 7.5% plus or minus a couple of pennies there?
I think
Is
so.
that included in this?
If I remember correctly. Do you remember? I think so.
I don't know.
I'm pretty sure. I believe so.
So the social security match is included in these numbers?
Yes, this is supposed to be the total cost. Yeah,
Okay,
no, we're not gonna use any general fund dollars at all, no.
and then, does this? Do we have employees that are on a defined benefit 401k style pension plan, or are they all on a pension plan?
Well, we have some people that came in, we've made some changes over time, so there's a few that are undefined benefit plans that are more of just a 401 style match. And we're in the middle of working on getting more into the cash balance style plan, which is sort of a defined contribution that acts like a defined benefit, but we're still working on that.
So again, knowing that a employee may allocate a certain percentage we put away and we have to match a certain, or do we match a certain percentage, and is that,
No,
there's no match?
no.
All right, I think that covers what I was thinking about.
Okay. Representative Fritchie, any questions for us tonight?
It's almost impossible, I think, to come up with the details that make each one rational, and I'm assuming that they were all done properly and so forth. This isn't a lot of money, and it looks like enough good people got something out of it. I do have to tell you that I'm not optimistic about a replacement program coming out that's gonna provide us with ARPA or CARES grant type funding. And in the Southeast Area Transit, for example, in our transportation center, you know, we're talking very closely with the state about what happens when ARPA runs out, because it's gonna run out for us probably the beginning of FY 24. And we put a lot of mileage in, tested a lot of things with it, and it's been really good, but I'm not sure that if anything's gonna be sustained. So what we did here, I can't see us doing anything different, because the money was there, it was free money, and we did it. And that's why we did it.
No, nothing's free. but Nothing I think too, this is what I think.
But you don't want to turn it down, someone else will take
I
it.
think it's like you said, there's a testing ground here.
Yeah,
And so we find the good and the bad and everything that we have. So.
That's right. That's a good thing.
Representative Chase, I know you have some questions for us. So.
Not very many.
That's okay, lots been answered.
Because I did watch those 6 hours.
and called me with some questions. And you also called me with some questions, yeah.
That's good, I think it's a good.
So, I know I asked you, John, about number 15, mobile meals, but I can't remember the answer. And I am so not for giving someone more than what they requested. But the vote that they took was not the 131,575. But yet I see it on here that they're getting the 131,575. Can you explain
The
that?
night of the resolution, so that was the cow, the night of the resolution, they made a couple of tweaks when they passed the resolution.
Yeah, okay.
I think that's when the ball fields were added on also at that time.
I really don't have any other questions, honestly. I did watch that whole meeting. And,
Bless you.
I know.
I didn't do it all in one fell swoop.
Yeah.
though, I have to say.
That was a long one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm a night person, so that works out.
Anything else, Representative Chase?
I don't think so. I mean, it is what it is, and I know that, because we have our money where I work, and there are such
Strict guidelines.
strict guidelines on what you can use it for, and I have every confidence that you guys are gonna keep your eye on that.
I think the agreement says everything.
Right, and the agreement says if you misuse it, you pay us. for it.
Yeah.
So,
From day one, we pretend that they're gonna do an audit. We hope there's never gonna be an audit on it, but we
Somebody
pretend
will.
and do everything as if there's gonna be an audit.
Right,
And that's great. I'm glad that
Yeah.
you guys are together and all coordinating this and. You know, pretty much, the only question that I had is that it's not gonna come back and bite us, which it's all been explained to me, and. I believe you're gonna be doing a fine job keeping everything in order, and I know this man over here will, and. It's like anything, you're never gonna be happy with all of it. Okay, and our job as a body is to approve the number. But this committee as long as we all agree that the money is being used in a proper manner, I think we should send it to the full body for a vote. So,
Well, I just wanna say, I just thank Paige and
yes,
Kevin,
thank everybody.
and I seen Kevin at all the events. when
He went everywhere.
I saw him everywhere when I was doing the chili and the Super Bowl and everything at Thrive 55, so.
You was handing out
Yes, he was,
those flyers, and I'm like.
and I would always, obviously for the RTM, we always see, I didn't need it, because I already did it, I scanned it all the time, so I just appreciate all the work you've done and continue to do so, thank you. I don't think you get told that enough, so thank you.
Yeah.
Do you have any more questions? Well, I'd like to take a vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Bill,
No.
okay. Aye.
I-
I know. Okay, so it's 6 in favor, 1 opposed. No abstentions, it passes out to the committee, so I take a motion to adjourn.
Regular meetings, just to consider more questions.
John, can you shut the.
Hey, John.
Bye, John.
Thank you.